right, let's see. Everything seems to be working pretty good. So, hey everyone. How's it going today? How's it going this week? Whew, things are really getting busy for me in terms of summertime busy with a lot of different things coming up. We got the Adobe Education Summit. We've got the How to Teach workshop and a couple other smaller things that I'm doing. So lots and lots of preparation for these events. Yeah. But today what we're going to do is we're going to do a small project inside of After Effects. And this project's going to involve motion tracking and being able to effectively replace some sort of an object inside of After Effects. And it's kind of funny because, like, my initial thoughts around this exercise were going to be to replace a billboard. So get some video with, like, either, you know, walking and the billboard's moving because the camera is moving and so forth, right? And then being able to put your own billboard on there. But there's a surprising lack of billboards when it comes to stock photography. So I looked at all the regular places and I couldn't find anything that was exactly what I needed. So then I decided, well, I'll shoot my own billboard video. But the problem with that is there aren't a whole lot of billboards around where I live. So I kind of nixed that idea and went instead with, well, let's replace a sign, right? We'll replace a sign with some sort of an ad, and that'll work just fine, right? So that's pretty much what I've got going on here. I've got some pieces of footage, and I've already brought them into After Effects here in my project. I've got this ad, and this is something that we created last week. So there is a replay on that if you want to check that out. And I've also got these two videos that I took on my phone, and we're going to use one of those and do some motion tracking against that. Hey Sean, how are you today? I hope well. And yeah, anybody watching in the chat, please go ahead and introduce yourself and let me know how things are going for you all today. And yeah, hopefully very well. So let's get going here. Let's see. What I need is, let's pop open Finder here, and we'll preview these different pieces of video. I think I know which one I want to use, but we'll have a look at both of them. So this one here I took at a park close to my house. It was after a rainstorm, so that's why there's water everywhere. And there we've got a couple signs here. And the thing to look at when you're doing motion tracking is you want to look for, you know, identifiable details, high contrast, high difference in luminance details for your tracking. Because what you basically do is you create these little tracking points, and then After Effects will try to keyframe by keeping an eye on the positions of those points as the movement occurs, right? So this one, you know, we've got a lot of really unique things. We've got some bolts here. We've got this sigil right here. We've got this coyote's face, and so forth. So this one I think might work out better than the other one. So let's have a look at the other one too. So, you know, this one's okay. I kind of like the movement a bit better in this one. There are still some points that we could identify as tracking points here. So we've got these bolts which seem to work pretty good, and actually this one's missing, so it's just like it's just a hole in the sign. However, with this particular sign, and I didn't even think about this until, you know, I previewed this afterwards. You know, the sign is obviously for, you know, don't let your dog poop all over the place, right? Which, yeah, you'd want to replace. Well, I mean, I don't have a dog, but I don't want dogs pooping all over the place either. So, you know, we could replace it, but, you know, that's kind of a good thing to have up there. And I guess the coyote thing is too, but Then we've got this guy here, and this is actually very unsightly, right? It's a bag disposal thing, and you got a garbage can here. It's just not as nice, even though I do like the motion a bit better. It's a bit more straight on, whereas this one, you know, when we start out here, it's going to be really hard to track from here over to here, just because there's such a difference, you know? It's so far away at first. So I think what I'm going to do is use a portion of this one. This one's a bit longer too, just because it's got that extra stuff. So what I'm going to do here is just drag this guy right into my project timeline, and that's going to create a new comp automatically. You can see that comp right here. And if I hit enter or return, I can rename the comp. This is always something that throws people off when they first start using After Effects, right? So like every other Adobe application, to rename something, you kind of double click on it, right? Type in the new name. If you do that here, it's not going to work. You got to hit enter or return with it highlighted. And I'm going to call this tracking sign. You can call it whatever, of course. So here I've got that. Right now we're at 50%. Let's go ahead and fit. And the first thing I want to do is kind of make some adjustments here. One thing, I only want this to be about 10 seconds in length, so let's go into our composition settings through the application menu up here. Oops, that popped up on my other window. There we go. And we can see it's I recorded this at 1280 by 720. We've got the frame rate here, that's fine. But the duration, because I created the comp based on footage, the duration of the comp is, you know, the duration of the footage itself. So I want to change this to 10, just flat 10, right? So 10 seconds. And there we go. So you can see that's been adjusted down here. We only have the 10 seconds now. And I need to figure out where I want this to start. Maybe somewhere around here. And I just realized this has that little poopy dispenser too, which, well, what are you going to do? They're everywhere along the trails, which is good because that means they're available for people to, you know, take care of their dog waste. All right, this looks pretty good. So all I've done here is just grabbed, you know, this little textured item here for the layer, and you just move it back and forth to kind of shift it, right? And that way, I've got my 10 seconds, and it's pretty good. And if we, oops, my browser head focus. There we go. So if we preview this, we can kind of see how that looks. All right. So there's definitely a number of things here, and you know, I'd recommend if you're doing tracking in After Effects like this, you know, find a good frame where you can really see the details, because that's going to assist you in placing those markers, right? Those tracking markers. And when you do that, you can always track ahead, and you can track, you know, previous frames as well. So it doesn't matter really if it's in the middle, because you can do this as much as you want. You know, you could always like track a little bit, stop, make some adjustments, track a little bit. This will probably work out pretty good in one go, but we'll kind of see what happens, right? Okay, so I also need this ad. So let's pull our ad down here. And drag it up. So there's our ad. And you can see it's absolutely huge right now. So we could, of course, you know, change the size of this if we wanted to, but actually the tracking is going to do that for us. So what we're going to do is just disable the visibility of our ad to start, and let's bring up our tracker. So the tracker can be found, I'm in the default workspace. It can be found alongside the side here, just under tracker. And you can do all sorts of stuff. If you want to do some warp stabilization here, stabilize motion, track camera, track motion, right? There's all sorts of different things. What we want to do in this case is we want to track motion based on these specific points. So I'm going to click on track motion, and notice that we're brought into the actual layer itself. So we're taken from our comp, which is here, and brought directly into the layer. And if we look here, it's created a tracker for us and given us a motion source for that MOV file. And if we twirl down inside of our timeline, we can see it's added motion trackers and a tracker. And right now the tracker just has a single track point. That's not what we want to have, though. What we want is a different type of tracker. So right now this is a transform tracker, but I want to actually use a perspective corner pin. What this does, you can see right here, it's created 4 different tracking points for me. So this is perfect for stuff like this. You could use this also to like replace screens. So if you got somebody with like a phone and you've got video of, you know, them clicking around on the phone and everything, you know, this would allow you to track those 4 corners, just like we're going to do with this sign or a television display or whatever, and then place something else on it. So this is of course super useful if you're like, you know, concepting something like Bold Brew coffee, right? That's my print advertisement. I got a big poster for it, and yeah, I want to see what this is going to look like in the public. So what I'm going to do is track it. So we can see we've got our current tracker here, and now that I've changed it into a perspective tracker, now I have those 4 track points that I can then mess with. And you can see here there's all sorts of different properties for each of these track points. However, you can also manipulate these you know, on the composition itself. So that's how I'm going to do it. Let's zoom in here. I'm going to go, we're at 113% right now. Let's go 200. 200 might be okay. So here's the deal. What we're going to do is set each of these points to certain places on our sign. And initially you might think to have, you know, both the point itself, right? And the frame that's around it. So if you look at these frames, so if I move this over here, it gives us a little zoomed in preview, right? So initially what you might think is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move each of these objects, these track points, onto each of these corners, right? However, that's actually not going to give you a very good tracking, right? It's not going to track very well because these little corners, they're not very good. They're not very high contrast enough. And it depends really, because like some things, if you've got like, you know, a high contrast sort of like white on black sort of thing with a display, you know, if you got a nice bezel or something, I mean, that might work out really well for tracking. If you think about tracking when you see it done, you know, with human beings, right? For films, right? They put little dots on them, like on their faces and everything. That's the whole reason for that, is so that they can later on put little tracking points on those features and be able to track. But the thing is here, you know, we are targeting, so this little area here is sort of like the, what's it called? It's the, you know, this is the area that defines what we're tracking, this inner rectangle. The outer rectangle is sort of like the search area. And if you look really close, and I know it's probably really hard to see with, you know, the video here, but if you look really close to the center here, there's also a little sort of, you know, point here. So the idea here is that we can actually, it doesn't have to be like this, right? It doesn't have to be, you know, a box within a box, and the very center is that point. Because the point, you can see, actually connects and defines the replacement area for what we're doing. This, yeah, this should be, you know, in the center here. And actually, if you look, check that out. We can move that independent of all the rest of this. So what I would recommend when you're doing stuff like this is to go ahead and actually define these different track points based on these features. So we can see right here this bolt. That's perfect for, setting up our sampling for the track point. However, the actual point here that I want defined, I'm going to overlay right there. So you can see these two are attached. They're all the same tracker, right? They're all the same track point, but the different pieces of each one and how they function, we're using them to a greater effect as we go through here, because we want this to replace that rectangle, the sign. So we're defining that area through the positioning of this. But of course, we also want to be able to deform this to change its position, scale, and so forth, right? And the way we do that is we set up these perspective track points on features that exist here. So here's another bolt, right? Let's go ahead and move this over. Now you can see what happens is everything is, transforming based on its proximity. So this is kind of where, why you want to set these track points first to define these areas, because then, here, I'm going to put that back. Then you can set these up later in relation to the actual points that you identify here. So let's go ahead and discover some additional features here. I'm going to say this right here. It's going to make a lot of sense. And you can even enlarge this if you want to, cover this entire piece here. And then this last one, I can put this on this bolt here, but it makes more sense probably to put it on the other bolt, right? The one on this other sign. So I'm using features that aren't even part of the image that I'm replacing, right? So you're not bound to only use items on what you're replacing. You can also, or what you're tracking rather. So let's go ahead and now shift these points over. Now recall that these points are going to, at this point, transform, so they'll rotate, scale, position changes when it's tracked in perspective of the different sample points that we've, the attached points, the sample points here that we've created. So now notice too, I'm defining these a little bit over the sign because I don't want the sign to peek out at all. It's almost kind of like it's sort of like a bleed, right, in InDesign. Not exactly, but that's a good way to think about it if you're coming from print. There we go. All right, so let's go back out to fit. And there we go. So we've got our area defined. It's going to grab that tracking information, set those keyframes, not based on this area, but actually based off of these. And it's going to translate those deformations and that movement onto the sign. So pretty cool. How do we actually get the add on there? You can see it's already set the motion target for my tracker to my add PNG layer. But if you wanted to change that, you can always go to edit target, and here you can choose a different layer. So it's chosen it by default simply because it's the only other layer that exists. But if I had a couple solids or some text or something in here, that would work just fine as well. All right, so let's go ahead and analyze this. The process after you actually create the tracker is to simply analyze forward, analyze backwards, or you can just analyze forward or backwards a single frame. So I'm going to go ahead and analyze forward first. Now, as it does this, and notice it's going really fast, which is pretty sweet. So it's gone ahead and done that, and you'll notice that it's done a really good job. And the reason it's done a really good job is because we spent so much time defining proper track points here. You can see those here, and you can even see the motion paths for the different keyframe adjustments. And then all those keyframes, right, show up down below here. So yeah, we've got everything up to there. Let's go ahead and let's analyze backwards now. And see towards the beginning right there, you can see it gets a little deformed, right? And remember too, it's doing this across the entire layer. We're not looking at the composition, we're looking at the actual layer here, right? So at the beginning of the layer, it can get a little weird, but if we go back out to our comp, you know, we're past that at this point, right? So now that we've got that stuff in there, let's go ahead and turn our ad back on. So there's our ad, and it hasn't been applied yet, right? So if we look, let's go back to our layer here. So if we look, there is a reset and an apply button. What this lets you do is it lets you go through and, you know, if it really goofed up, you could always just reset it and start over. Or you can go through and just tweak different little things. But ours is really good, so I'm gonna hit apply. So just boop. It's gonna take a little bit, and check that out. Got our bold brew coffee right there. And if we preview, pretty good. So you can see at the beginning here, we've got a little bit of that corner poking out, right? So if I was really picky about it, I could go back in and change some of I could reset it, change my control points and everything. Or I could just do it at the beginning here. You can see it's just kind of peeking out there a little bit. So, you know, it looks pretty good. There's some things that, you know, don't look so great. And let's put this on full actually. The preview's still kind of junky. That's okay. All right, so now that we've got that in there, you know, there are other things we could always do to make this look realistic, more realistic, right? So I'm gonna actually lock down my video, and let's, I don't know if motion blur is gonna really help in this case, but I'm gonna enable motion blur there, and that might, you know, kind of smooth some things out a little bit. But another thing we could do, notice bold brew, it's very, very flat. So, you know, you could always, no, it's not gonna let me make it a 3D layer, is it? Oh, there we go. So we could always put some lighting on here. And for lighting, of course, you need to enable it as a 3D layer. Let's go ahead and maybe just put a little light on here. Just create a new light. See how that works. And let's change the color a little bit. A little bit warmer. And yeah, so you can see that changes it a bit. But then we're able to go into our light options here, make additional adjustments. So maybe I don't know if an ambient light is the best for this, but yeah, you can see that kind of helps a bit. And you could try out different lights. So maybe, you know, ambient's not exactly what you're looking for. You want a little more, you know, a little more stuff going on. Let's choose a point light. And yeah, so you can see here, there's a big difference with the point light, right? And here's the light itself. We could always make adjustments with these 3D gizmos over here. change things like the X position. Let's see, the Y position up here. Yeah, so that is looking a lot more realistic with the point light. So here's, oops, get back over there. So here's the point light. Here's flat, and then we've got our ambient light. So, you know, I would say, you know, if you want to make this look more and more realistic as you go through here, you know, do something where you change the, you add lights like this. See, that looks a lot better. You just add lights, and don't forget to make your object you want to light a 3D object. And you can also, of course, go through and do some color grading, things like that. So, you know, if you go through and, you know, find some effects and presets for color correction and so forth, you could always go through and, you know, take care of anything like that. There's lots and lots of color correction stuff here. There's lumetri color. There's, you know, just so many different effects and so forth. So anyway, that's about it, really. Pretty good. I think that works out. Let's lock down the rest of our lights here, and let's render this, right? So to render it, I'm just gonna go to composition, and let's add to media encoder Q. I like the render Q as well, but with the media encoder Q, I like to be able to, you know, output it directly to MP4. And it depends on what you're doing it for, right? If you're gonna hand off the highest quality render available, you're obviously gonna wanna add it to the render queue and just do it like that. I'm gonna use the media encoder queue today, anyway. And media encoders should be popping up soon enough. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get the message, right? Media encoder can be lazy sometimes. And it's not coming, but let's do a spotlight search. Oh, here it comes. Hello. All right, so we'll see. It usually takes a few minutes, even after it opens up, for it to receive the particular comp and the instructions from After Effects. And when you're doing stuff with media encoder and animate, it works very similarly. If you're exporting as a video from animate, right, it'll hand off to Adobe Media Encoder. And yeah, there it goes. So it just popped in. Wonderful. So now that it's in there, we've got this set, you can see, to H.264. We can always change exactly where this is going, and this is going to exactly where I want it to, so that's fine. I am going to change the preset though. I don't need it to be super high quality, so I'm going to choose YouTube 720p HD. Go ahead and render that out. Get our little preview down below as it goes and renders our comp. And notice it's using the dynamic link server, so it's tapping directly into the comp inside of After Effects to do this. And then there we go, we got our little preview there. Looks like it's going to take about a minute or two to render this, which, you know, rendering, you've got to expect it, right? So as this is rendering, the chat's been really quiet today. So if anybody has anything they want to mention, anything you want to promote, you can go ahead and do that. speaking of promotion is going down here, I have this promotion. So this is for the Adobe for Education Summit. There's a pre-conference day and there's a 2-day summit. It's free, it's all online, and yeah, definitely check it out if you are you know, a university educator or a K-12 educator. There's content for everyone. It is very education focused, of course. You know, this channel itself is the, you know, an Adobe featured educator Behance stream. So yeah, I'm gonna pop the let's see if I can remember it here. Actually, I've got it on my Twitter. There's a link that'll take you to both. If I can find my Twitter. Oh, and look at that. Our items are all taken care of. That's perfect. So, coming up here. Oops. Yeah, so if you're interested in the pre-conference, which is most of what I'll be doing, the link for that is adobe.ly/edu summit preconf. This will sign you up for both the pre-conference and the general conference. However, if you only want to check out the general conference, so the pre-conference has a lot more stuff around, you know, digital media and professional tooling and so forth. The general conference is much more kind of general education focused, right? So if you only care about that, then there's that secondary link. It's just adobe.ly/edu summit GA. So either GA or pre-conf, and again, the pre-conf will set you up with both of those if you're interested. All right, so I'm gonna take that off screen. Spread the word either way, please. Yeah, so it's done, right? Here we go. It's inside of our folder here. Let's go ahead and give it a peek, see how it looks when it's rendered. Yeah, pretty good. Again, the corner didn't come out that great, but you know, this is something that could be fixed easily enough. If we just go back in and change those trackers around a little bit, just move that one up past the corner a bit. And this is the reason why I, you know, initially had it bleeding over the edge of the original sign. But cool, that works out pretty good. All right. Well, that was a quick one. That only took like 30 minutes to do. Actually, I started a little early today, but that's okay. I've got a lot to do, so that's why. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining again. Well, it's been 36 minutes, so that's not too bad. I hope everybody's well. And actually, next week is the last week for a bit that I'm going to be doing a live stream, simply because I have the How to Teach workshops the week after, and that conflicts with my conference, my stream, and also, as I mentioned, the Education Summit is the week after that. So I'm going to be here next week, but the 2 weeks following I won't. And again, you can always check on my actual Behance page to see what the schedule is, what the upcoming schedule is like. All right, but that's that. So thanks all. I am going to take off. Have a nice one, and perhaps see you next week for the last one. Last one of July, I guess.